Hey, Mickey.
We came.
Hey, Bob.
We saw. He died.
That's a famous video of Hillary Clinton getting a little chuckle over a guy who was sodomized to death. That would be Muammar Gaddafi.
Yes, we came. We saw. He died. Did it have anything to do with your? I'm sure.
So
that was right after Gaddafi was killed with a bayonet. I guess among other things. Yeah.
So there have been two shifts in the conventional wisdom, like dramatically this week. One is, and the one is about Hillary Clinton. I mean, my friend John Ellis.
Oh no, you're not going to tell me she's going to run for president, are you?
My friend John Ellis wrote an item.
Do not tell
saying,
me what you're going to tell me.
Of course, Hillary's running for president. Of course, she's laying the groundwork. And he has a site called News Items.
Yeah.
The T-shirt of which I'm wearing.
I was going to say, for some reason it says, that's all to plug your friend's site.
This is just no.
You unbutton your shirt. You spent precious podcast time unbuttoning your shirt just to plug your friend's site.
The sex appeal too.
Well, but, I gotta say, I was really distracted by that, and not in a good way.
Well, it's not directed to you, Bob. It's like the Beatles. You know, a million screaming girls. Anyway,
they're out there somewhere.
No, it's about the conventional wisdom shifting. Ellis wrote this column saying Hillary's running. And all of a sudden, a light bulb goes off, and everybody realizes, of course, she's running. And now the conventional wisdom, people told Ellis he was insane. Within 24 hours, it was the conventional wisdom that she's running. She's obviously, if you go back, laying the groundwork, these appearances, reading from the speech she would have given if she'd won. And who else do they have? Who's going to beat her? I think somebody will beat her, but that doesn't mean she's not running. So, yes.
How old is she? How old is she?
Turned on a dime, and now everybody realizes
how old is she?
It's going to be a Trump versus Hillary rematch.
How old is she? Do you know?
I don't know. Younger than Trump.
I mean, that reminds me. I thought you were gonna lead with Omicron, which is all the rage out here.
Well, the conventional wisdom on that has shifted too.
But toward alarm.
Toward everybody's going to get it, give up on protecting yourself from it, but it's probably not that damaging, but you're going to get it, so that's going to happen. It's so infectious.
I don't think there's any good evidence that it's less severe than prior variants. I don't think there's any good evidence of that yet.
But there's a brand new info from South Africa, which came out about a few hours ago.
Oh, well, I haven't seen that.
Well, it's not definitive, but it does show that the hospitalizations and the deaths are much lower than previous waves in South Africa, about 1/3 to 1/2. And this Dr. Lin, who I used to worship like a god, says that thought that this was very important evidence, and then he started thinking about, well, what does it reflect? Merely a change in how many people, on the unvaccinated who had natural immunity. But why would it change that quickly? I mean, that's
well, compared to previous waves were a while ago, and those waves created a lot of natural immunity. Post wave, you have a lot more natural immunity.
Depends how many people were affected by those waves, yes. But
I think there's a reason they call it a wave, because a lot of people were affected.
Well, and then the theory is that maybe it's just, and then there was another guy who John Ellis cites, who says, well, it could just be a compositional effect as the vaccinated to unvaccinated ratio has, or the immune to non-immune ratio has changed. So it looks like it's less virulent. I guess it's the same point. Looks like it's less virulent.
Yeah, that is
really
the
all
same
that's
point.
happened. Well, all that's happened is that there are more immune people now. But there's no evidence that it's just as virulent. I mean, everywhere it's happened, the death rate seems to be lower.
Well,
anyway, that's the conventional wisdom. It could be wrong.
I'm not sure it's very conventional among people who are paying close attention. But we'll see. I mean, that would be great. It's spreading fast. In my state, it's now, as of a couple of days ago even, it was 13% of the positives are Omicron.
The argument would be that it's the Omicron variant that we have sort of compounded with some other coronavirus. So it affects it doesn't go into the lungs. It concentrates in the throat.
Well, I think also the nasal passages, it definitely has different symptoms, and it could be milder. I don't think it's going to be so much milder that this is not going to put a strain on hospitals. I mean, there are a lot of variables. Like, for example, this Pfizer drug that has not quite been approved by the FDA, and I don't think Pfizer has enough of these to flood the market with them right away, but I don't know the rate at which they're producing them. But that could be, a big deal eventually. The one that has been approved, the Merck drug, is looking worse and worse, and it only barely got FDA approval, a vote of 13 to 10, and one reason for that is there are serious people who think that this actually could create new variants, because the way it actually works is to mess with the genetic information of the virus. It tries to insert strands of genetic information that make the virus go haywire, but there are smart people who say, be careful, and I think... if this happened, if you could trace a dangerous new variant to this drug, I think that would be a big political problem for Biden, among other things, because he isn't overriding the FDA approval. Anyway, that's kind of a tangent.
But even to continue my thought, even if it affects only the throat and not the lungs now, that doesn't mean it won't mutate in the future in a way that makes it just as infectious and vaccine resistant. So it keeps the modifications to the spike, but also gets into the lungs, which makes it more deadly. So to continue the emerging conventional wisdom, it is that this is our way out of the problem, right? Because it affects everybody. It confers a lot of immunity, but doesn't kill a lot of people. But eventually, it recedes into the background the way other diseases do, because they become less virulent, and everybody's immune to them. But if it mutates again, it seems to me, then it's not the way out of the problem. It is the problem.
Well, if it mutates enough to be qualitatively different, I think they'd call it a new variant, and that could certainly happen. That's what's been happening.
Right.
I don't feel personally worried. I mean, I guess, what's the deal? If you've had 2 Pfizer shots, your chances of being hospitalized by this are less than 1/3 of what they would be otherwise. And for most people, those are pretty low to begin with, and so on. And I've actually, had a booster shot. But I do think, especially in areas with low vaccination rates, this is going to put a strain on hospitals. And, even before, there's this now suddenly relevant David Frum tweet. I mean, if you play that scenario out where a lot of people are suddenly being hospitalized, Pfizer is not going to be able to ramp up this new wonder drug super fast. I think right now they only have a couple of 100,000 doses. You're going to start seeing questions about who gets that drug and who doesn't. Now, David Frum, did you see his triage quote? Tweet, I mean? Got a lot of blowback. He says, this is from a few days ago. He says, seems the best option is, 1, keep encouraging vaccines and boosters. Okay. 2, impose vaccine mandates where it can be done. 3, otherwise return to normal as fully as we can, especially the schools. Okay. Then 4, let hospitals quietly triage emergency care to serve the unvaccinated last. Now,
so kill the deplorable.
Hear these kinds of arguments.
He wants to kill. That? He's gone from a never Trumper to a kill the Trumpers.
Well, look, you're going to see other flips. You're going to see, you may see conservatives who have always said if people's bad behavior leads them to be in trouble, it's not the job of my tax dollars to bail them out, right? And you may see them suddenly saying,
but that doesn't mean you deny life-saving treatment to people.
I'm not defending it. I'm just saying it's going to be an interesting argument. And look, I just remembered this piece I wrote in the New Republic like decades ago when I was in a bad mood, I guess. But, Mickey Mantle needed a new liver, and he got one. And I got the sense that he had kind of jumped the line because he's Mickey Mantle. And I said, screw that. He drank himself into this problem. It was his choice. He shouldn't, he shouldn't get to jump the line. So I guess I'm on record as saying people should be held accountable for their behavior.
Well, first, the whole logic of, first, this pill has to be given early enough, right after you get it. Okay. If you wait, the pill doesn't work. So maybe that'll cut down on, that's one way to triage it. You give it to people where it's early enough that it will have an effect. The second thing is the whole logic of national health care and health insurance and the Democrats' strategy is if somebody's sick on the sidewalk, we help them, whatever their moral failings, whatever their income, we don't impose a work test, we help them. Fine.
Right. But that doesn't come at the expense of someone else in that case. Here we have a finite resource. There's not enough for everybody. And I'm not supporting Frum here. I'm saying you're going to see an argument.
It's the same because you made a difficult decision whether to get vaccinated or not, which is not all one way. The way we determine it is wrong. You don't get health care. That's insane.
Okay? Well, I'm arguing. I'm not arguing either side. I am arguing that it's not insane.
I am arguing either side.
I know you are. And you're saying it's literally crazy to even bring up the question. I'm saying classically, this is the kind of question we actually have brought up repeatedly. And it's always been an easier case because usually, in principle, you can treat everyone. It's like, in other words, okay, they do take my tax dollars to treat drug addicts who in some sense chose to mess with drugs. Fine, but they're not taking treatment away from me. What's going to make this a contentious issue is that there's going to be people who say, God damn it, I wore my mask, I got my vaccine, and this guy was out partying and making fun of people like me, and you're going to take this life-saving thing from me and give it to him? That's a serious argument.
But the standard triage rules are you apply the care where it will do the most good, and people who've done everything right are probably going to survive anyway, and the people unvaccinated, the people who are going to die.
That is true.
You focus the medicine where it does the most good. So
that is true. It's a complicated
theories.
Question. I mean, I have to admit, when I saw his tweet, I was shocked because it sounded so cold, But then when I started thinking about Omicron, I thought, well, this is going to become a debate. Especially all the more so since, the people who were not vaccinated, it's not like they're going to say, well, I've had a change of philosophy, and now I think people whose behavior leads them into a bad way should get government help. What they're going to say is, assuming this debate really does blossom, they're going to say, I don't think vaccines help that much or something. I don't think it was because I was unvaccinated. So it's going to be a messy thing, and maybe it won't happen at all. But it's looking like there's going to be a strain on medical resources.
The spread of the Omicron is going to ramp up faster than Pfizer can ramp up this pill.
That's what it looks like right now. Somebody, what's his name? The New York Times health correspondent or science guy, Carl Zimmer, said as much on a podcast.
There are other therapies around. For example, AstraZeneca has some cocktail which they claim is now effective. So it's not like everything is on the Pfizer.
Yeah, but it seems far and away the best because for one thing, you don't have to go to the hospital. It's not injected. It's got a 90% efficacy rate, and that holds up against Omicron because how it works has nothing to do with the Omicron mutations.
I don't know what AstraZeneca involves. The other thing that I don't think the booster is all that effective against Omicron.
Well, the booster is another question. The booster does have some efficacy against Omicron, apparently, but that's not relevant to this.
I understand, but your previous rules for what we should do included getting the booster, and as if the booster was like a huge amount of protection. And I'm not sure the booster does help against Omicron. One recent study I saw said it was a mild improvement. It was not a huge we were expecting a huge boost from the booster, like from 20% effective to 85% effective. Apparently, that's not the case.
Well, it depends on whether you're talking infection or hospitalization. Those are different things. Okay. But the vaccine helps, certainly in terms of hospitalization, to some extent in terms of infection. Fully vaccinated helps against Omicron relative to no vaccination. The booster helps more. I'm pretty sure of those things.
The booster helps more, but the point is the booster is not like everybody's walking around thinking I have the booster, so I've done everything right. I've licked this thing. Mm. Omicron can't fuck with me, and apparently that's not true.
I mean, this also depends on lifestyle changes. Do people really lock down? We'll see. I was thinking, supposedly this is like 3 times as transmissible.
But the CW, this is my point about the CW. The CW, I think, is emerging. Forget about lockdowns. Everybody's going to get this thing. We're not going to stop the spread. And in part, that's because the CW is driven by other forces, like everybody's sick of lockdowns and people have kids in school, and the evidence coming out on the loss of learning being so severe. People just don't want lockdown, so they will latch onto this theory that everybody's going to get it.
School is a special case. I think a lot of people think we just can't stand anymore keeping kids out of school as a question of social cohesion almost, but that's not the same as saying people are going to keep going to restaurants and going to movies and going to theaters. I don't think they are. I think you're going to see, I think people who have movies coming out right now are in trouble if they were hoping people to show up in theaters. I think you're going to see this really affect behavior.
Spider-Man will be a test of that. You can't really count West Side Story as a test of that because nobody wanted to see the woke West Side Story.
None of your friends.
Objectively, it's a flop. I don't have that many friends.
That's already clear.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think you're right.
Is Omicron?
I think you're right.
I don't think it's hit. Has it even hit Southern California big time? I mean, people I know in New York, including my daughters, are saying like suddenly they're getting texts from everybody saying, you were exposed to me, and I just found out I was exposed to somebody, or I actually have it. And they just weren't getting these texts, 4 days ago.
It's just started to spread in New York. People that I would not expect to get it have gotten it. So I don't think I don't know if that's happened in California, but you're right that it may not have hit California yet. But I may not be in California, Bob. You don't know that.
You may not be. That's true. That doesn't look like a small apartment.
It does look like a small apartment.
That's right.
It doesn't look like my small apartment, which isn't small.
I know.
So yes.
Presidential candidates or...
So I have nothing more to say about Hillary except yes, of course she's running. She'll go as far as she can. She has to be stopped.
Well, I have something to say on this question, which is... I read this. Did you see his New York Times piece? It was maybe close to, it was like 5 days ago, by Jonathan Martin and Alexander Burns about Democratic candidates. They led with this guy I've never heard of, Governor Roy Cooper of North Carolina.
Right.
I have no idea, but apparently he's on the one hand professing to be a big backer of President Biden while and his being reelected, while at the same time quietly preparing to run himself. But anyway, the first paragraph where they list a bunch of candidates sounds to me like almost an attempt to sabotage the Democratic Party. Here they go. The list of potential candidates starts with Mrs. Harris, and includes the high-profile transportation secretary Pete Buttigieg, as well as a collection of former presidential candidates like Senators Elizabeth Warren. She's older than Hillary, I think. And Amy Klobuchar. Oh, my God. She of the shaking hair and quaking voice. Then they get to Mitch Landrieu. I don't know much about him. Gretchen Whitmer. Here's a weird sentence. Governor Phil Murphy of New Jersey, having survived a harder than expected re-election last month in a dismal political environment. Yeah. I didn't think you get credit for almost losing what was supposed to be a surefire win, but maybe now they're chalking that up to the dismal political environment.
It's a bad list so far, yes.
Governor J.B. Pritzker.
Okay.
Is that good? I don't know anything about him. He's a billionaire.
He's a billionaire. I know nothing about him. He's a billionaire and he's obese.
That doesn't seem like a winning formula.
No. What about the Kentucky guy, Brashear, or whatever the guy's name is?
Beats me. You know these people. I don't.
But
please tell me Hillary's not running.
He may be a Republican. This is why Hillary's running. This list is why Hillary's running.
Well, yeah, but what this list has in common with the idea of Hillary running is both events no understanding of what kind of candidate you need in the age of Trump.
Correct. Or
just settle for a white male, okay? If that's what it takes to win, do it.
In what age does America like Hillary Clinton? Not just the age of Trump.
No, but she's kind of uniquely she was perfect bait for Trump. I mean,
she's not unique. Kamala Harris is just like.
No, there are a number of Democrats who don't look. Meanwhile, but Trump himself is not looking that great lately, right? What are you doing? You calling somebody?
Andrew Bashir, Democrat, governor of Kentucky. Good-looking guy.
Let me see. Looks pretty generic, but that's what it could take to win.
And I think he has a good rep. So, anyway, I don't understand why he's not mentioned enough.
I mean, there must be decent candidates out there.
Well, it'll be somebody like Jimmy Carter, who nobody knew about it, until he did well in Iowa and New Hampshire. So that's why we have primaries, to draw all these crazy people out of the woodwork.
Yeah.
Bob, I came in third in the most populous state in the union.
What percentage of the vote did you garner? What percentage did you garner? 5 voters or 5%?
5%.
That's better than 5 voters. That's the only thing I can think of to say about it, but it is better than 5 voters.
It was 123,000 voters, Bob.
Yeah, but tell me, what does science tell us about the number of people in an election like that who will just vote for somebody they've never heard of and have no idea? Like if you just put a fake name on a ballot like that, how many votes would that get? Like 121,000?
I think the conventional wisdom was, some of that's legitimate. If you hate the status quo and you're the anti-status quo candidate, you deserve those votes. Some of them are just like, random people who vote stupidly in every election. I think the conventional wisdom was that I did 1% better than that number that you said.
Than a fake name would have done?
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
But you were elected president of Beverly Hills High School, were you not, of the student body?
Well, that's a traditional jumping off point for presidents, yes.
Yeah, so you're 1 for 2. Hey, how about you on the Democratic ticket, Mickey?
What about, speaking of people who've advanced in the hierarchy.
Is this a Vance pun?
Not only did Lewis Hamilton get knighted, Lewis Hamilton, the world's formerly number 1 Formula One driver, turns out he's the very rare black Formula One driver.
Oh, is he?
Yeah. And
didn't he win a recent race in controversial fashion?
I think he lost a recent race in controversial fashion.
Oh, in controversial fashion.
And he lost the championship.
Mm.
So he's not champion anymore. But he has been 7 times, I believe, a whole lot. So he got knighted. And Matt Ridley, I think, has been knighted. Because there was
Matt Ridley was
one
knighted?
of the stories. I don't know. One of the stories I wanted to talk about.
Matt Ridley he was born to nobility. I've been to his place in well,
maybe it's another England. Ridley, but there was a story.
His father was he is in the House of Lords. His father was in the House of Lords.
Wait, Matt Ridley's in the House of Lords?
Yes. I'm telling you.
He wasn't knighted. He wasn't knighted. He's just Lord Ridley then. Okay.
Right. He's Lord Ridley.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay. He's Lord.
I
didn't know he was Lord.
Anyway. You should see his manner, as we say.
Okay. Can I get to the substance?
Oh,
the substance is there was testimony in Parliament that the lab leak hypothesis is now growing stronger because they haven't found the fucking animal that would be the intermediary, and that's very unusual. And this woman, Dr. Lena somebody, who is a co-author with Lord Ridley of a book on the lab leak hypothesis
called Viral,
claims that we are going to find out eventually once, with the passage of time, as Chinese scientists sort of learn to evade the restrictions. I don't know why she's so confident.
Wait, as they learn to what?
With the passage of time, right now they're terrified of coming forward. At some point, they're either going to come forward or they're going to defect, or the word will get out, and we'll find out that it came from the lab. That's what she thinks. So Lord Ridley also testified and agreed with his co-author, shockingly.
Well, one thing I've learned that does add to the credibility of lab leak. Other people had learned it weeks and weeks ago, but I didn't quite realize, there was this, there's this furon cleavage site in the DNA or whatever, and in the virus's genetic code, and that was viewed suspiciously because apparently David Baltimore at least didn't think it would happen naturally. And then there have been two kind of competing bodies, things that have happened since that was originally discovered. Recently, they have found that in nature, I think, and so that works against the lab leak. But as we had discussed, it also turned out that this dubious group, that Eco Health Alliance, had applied for a grant to add that very site. And been denied the grant by DARPA. What I hadn't realized is they did apply for that grant in collaboration with the Wuhan lab.
Right.
I didn't really totally get that because the work was not going to be done at Wuhan. It's going to be done in North Carolina. But the fact that Wuhan was in on the grant application suggests that, yes, they could have found another funder and done it.
Right.
It's kind of striking.
What his co-author said is, you apply for a grant to add horns to horses, and you're turned down, but it turns out a year later, in Wuhan, they discover there's unicorns running around.
Right.
You get a little suspicious, yeah.
Although again, it's been found in nature in some species, right? But still,
up to a point, Lord Wright.
Is that a famous?
Yes, Lord
reference?
Copper. I've used that expression before. It's an expression from Evelyn Waugh's book, Scoop.
I never read Evelyn Waugh. I feel guilty. That was a Mike Kinsley favorite.
It was and it turns out when my father was dying, I read him Vile Bodies, which I think is Kinsley's favorite Waugh book. And my father started finishing the sentences for me.
Because he had read it so many times?
He'd already read it. What was I doing reading him this book he'd already read? Anyway.
Bring back pleasant memories.
What can I say? Not so pleasant. So there's also the zombie Build Back Better bill, which they did not finish and in time for the Christmas vacation on Capitol Hill, so it's been put over till next year. And the question is, does this mean it's dead? I don't think it means it's dead, but people have already started the recriminations. I guess the reason you'd argue it's dead, the way it would die is inflation remains high. Manchin is not a guy who wants to kill the bill. Okay, they're not going to take a vote where Manchin kills the bill. He's not going to do that. So
he doesn't want to be seen killing the bill.
Well, I don't think he really wants to kill the bill. I mean, he wants something to pass that meets his specifications. It doesn't meet anybody else's specifications, or it doesn't meet the majority of the Democrats' specifications. So it might not fly.
Know what I think?
But they might have to come back to him. That's how it would pass. But go ahead.
You know what I think he wants, and I'll give you a clue. It's the same thing Trump wants. What is the answer to that riddle?
Attention.
Exactly. He could just lay out any day. Joe, you've had about a fucking year. You just lay out, tell us what you actually want, and let's either get this done or not. He wants attention. He loves being in the limelight.
Anyway, the way it would die is, inflation gets bad, a bunch of senators get cold feet, and they go to Schumer and say, let's not make a big fuss about this. Let's just let it die. Okay? And so Schumer somehow engineers something where it dies quietly or with some face-saving piece of theater, like this week's face-saving theater is, we're moving to voting rights. No, they're not moving to voting rights. They're just trying to cover for the fact that they're giving up on Build Back Better. But Manchin's line has been reasonably consistent, which is, I want you to focus on one thing, do it well, and you can choose which thing you want to focus on. My great worry is the thing they're going to focus on is the child tax credit, which is expiring even as we speak, and that Manchin so they're going to extend it for 10 years without a work test. Now, even that's not the end of the world because the subsequent Congress can repeal it, and it looks like the subsequent Congress is going to be Republican. So even that doesn't mean it's actually going to happen for 10 years. But and McConnell did mention the work test and say we have concerns about the work test. So it's possible that there'll be some negotiations. The Democrats will never agree to a work test. So that would, I think, kill it.
Do the tax credits get mailed out as monthly checks?
Half of them. Half to get
so
half the amount
as of January, a non-trivial number of people in West Virginia quit getting checks, and it's clearly because of Joe Manchin, and that's not a problem for him?
Well, people on the left, like Matt Iglesias, have been wondering, why is this not a problem? And it's because those damn people in West Virginia believe in work, Bob. And the liberals are constantly confounded and flummoxed by all these people we're giving free money to. My God, they believe in work. There's the idiots. What's the matter with West Virginia?
It's sheer conjecture on your. This is all complete conjecture.
No, Iglesias cites a couple of articles. One by Alex McGillis, one in Vox, where they talk to people, and that seems to be the problem. Is
let me be clear.
Let me be clear. Non-workers. That means they value work.
Let me be clear. I'm not denying that there are lots of people in West Virginia who say, "Don't give it to people who don't work." I'm suggesting that if you ask people who are themselves going to quit getting the check next month, if they say, wait, what happened? You say, well, you don't understand. We want to make sure that nobody who's not working gets it. You're saying they're going to go, oh, okay, in that case, I'm glad I'm not getting it anymore.
I'm saying they're going to
Well, maybe, but there's no evidence. And Matt doesn't have it and you don't have it.
Well, because it hasn't happened yet, Bob. But Matt is already anticipating that it will be a problem and figuring out what's the matter with West Virginia. Yes, I think it will. I think that there will not be a huge revolt against Joe Manchin if the child tax credit dies. Yes. But keep in mind, the child tax credit isn't going to die. It just goes back to its former level, which is $2,000 a year instead of $3,600, with a mild work test at the beginning that lops off the bottom. So the people who are satisfied the work test, which again is only mean you have to earn like $1,700 a year, those people are still going to get checks. They're just going to be smaller checks.
Well, smaller $1,600 less a month is real money to some people.
I agree. It would be real money to me. I mean, one gets addicted to any amount of money one gets from the government very quickly. So, but that's an ameliorating factor, and I don't think he's going to pay a big price. I'm saying it. You're saying he will. Let's see who's right.
No, I don't know.
All I'm saying is the left is anticipating that you're wrong.
I just asked the question. I don't have, and I suspect that he does. And when you said there's evidence, there actually isn't any evidence. There could be. You could survey people who are getting the checks, but nobody has.
Well, no, they wouldn't necessarily give the honest answer of how they'd behave.
Well,
that's like all these questions. We've done surveys show that people use the checks to provide baby diapers and to give additional schooling for their kid. They're not going to tell you, oh, I blew my check on fentanyl, okay? The surveys are inherently unreliable. They're not going to, you don't know how mad you're going to be when the check stops until the check stops. This would tend to go in it would tend to show that people would be less mad, I think, than they will be.
Yeah, I don't know. I just wonder why he doesn't. I wonder if he's even planning to run again sometimes. And he may not. He's pretty old.
He won with it. He may also switch parties.
I would welcome that. I mean, just end the charade.
You mean shut down the Democratic Congress? Schumer is gone as majority leader. McConnell becomes majority leader.
Well, that's going to happen anyway. That's going to happen anyway. At least, Democrats going to lose the Senate. At least we'll know who the Democrats are.
Well, it might not. It might not be McConnell. There's a movement against him engineered by Trump, which I don't think will go anywhere.
But that seems to not be laying a glove on him, as far as I can tell. One of various signs, I gather, that Trump is far from omnipotent right now. Right? I mean,
I agree. It depends. Do the Trump candidates in the primaries, like the one in Alaska, who have pledged not to work with McConnell, do they win? And if they all win, then McConnell may be in a little trouble. But they're not going to win. So, yes, you're right.
Now, what do you think of, well, there's two things. There's Chris Wallace leaving Fox on the heels of, first of all, is that a quiet protest against Tucker Carlson going full-on conspiracy theorist?
I don't know. I think it's more like the audience doesn't like Chris Wallace because they think he's too liberal. I think Tucker Carlson...
You think he was pushed? So you think he was pushed?
Well, there are negotiations, and they offer him less money than he wants. The general rule on Fox, which I get from my friend John Ellis, is the audience programs the network rather than the other way around. So they have to give the audience what it wants, and the audience doesn't want Chris Wallace. They want whatever Tucker Carlson is doing, because Tucker Carlson is also catering to the audience. So, in a certain sense, the audience always does the programming. The only reason that's noteworthy on Fox is that originally Fox had an ideological mandate. They were there to impose an ideology. And then when push came to shove, they didn't really stick with that. They just surrendered to the Trump constituency. And so now they are completely hostage to the audience. But remember, after the election, Fox was kind of holding out against the Stop the Steal movement. That's a good point. I guess you could argue that even without an ideological commitment, if it was just a regular network, they have a lot of leeway to put out something new and let it find an audience. I mean, that's the famous story of Brandon Tartikoff, which is he let the NBC shows find an audience even though they weren't popular in the ratings. And I have a feeling in cable, you can't go 2 weeks with lower ratings before they order you to change back. CNN has low ratings now. They're not going to, they can stomach it for a while. And I don't think Fox can stomach it for 2 weeks. And that's, I guess, because their ratings are ideological. In other words, there's no way the deplorables who watch Fox are going to suddenly become liberal and like Chris Wallace.
True.
So I guess that would be the argument why it's an unusual arrangement.
I mean, but I take your point. All the audiences are ideological now. Washington Post. There was a story about the Washington Post taking a big dive, readership wise. I mean, all of them kind of have to some extent since over the last year as things have become less intense politically. But the Post, especially, Politico, especially. And to a lesser extent, the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. Well,
I would think the news there is the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal aren't paying the price. The news is not so much
paying a little price.
You would expect a huge price. So if anybody's surviving the transition, of course, the New York Times is surviving the transition by keeping Trump alive with January 6th and constantly catering to its readers' viewpoints in its coverage. So it's the exception that proves the rule.
Doesn't the Washington Post do a fair amount of that?
True. But I don't know. You could argue that the New York Times sort of owns that franchise. Maybe.
I also think they're more diversified, less reliant on politics and stuff. I don't know. What do I know? What about what? Yeah.
No, that's true.
What about? Did you find anything noteworthy in these texts that were sent January 6th by various Fox personalities to Mark Meadows?
I did. I mainly looked at Ingram's because they were highlighted by the Washington Post writer Aaron Blake, and I thought Ingram was pretty clean. I mean, she sends an email saying this is not doing Trump any good. He should stop it, and she goes on TV and says it didn't do Trump any good. So she also said that Antifa was spotted, but that by implication means Antifa would be also doing Trump no good. It's not a contradiction. So the people who say there's a huge I think this redounds to their favor. I think they're smelling like a rose. Think how horrible it would be if they said, "Don't stop these people; they're going to overturn the election." Right. That's what we want.
Right. I mean, especially his son, Donald Trump, tweeted. First of all, I mean, not tweeted, but texted. And first of all, it's interesting that he doesn't think he can text his father directly. That seems kind of odd. He texted Mark Meadows, and I would think he would be, he could take it as exoneration that he said, I think, quote, "This has gone too far." So he can rightly claim he didn't plan for it to go this far. I think the thing that Ingram tweeted that some people took as a contradiction that wasn't read closely was this. She said, this is antithetical to MAGA. She didn't mean these are not, that doesn't necessarily mean these aren't Trump supporters.
Right.
But some people took it that way.
She meant it objectively, it hurts MAGA.
Yeah. I mean, the other interesting thing is just how clearly symbiotic the Fox folks were with the Trump administration. I mean, like they're all texting Meadows. It's like, we have our buttons on the control panel here.
Well, they're texting him doesn't mean they expected to get Laura does get results. So yes, you're right. You're right. They're very tight with the administration, but it reminded me of New Hampshire in 2008 when Obama started. Everybody realized that, oh my God, this guy could be our first black president. And he had no security, not even metal detectors, okay? And think of all the kooks out there who might want to take a shot at the first potential black president. And everybody in the media started calling and emailing anybody they knew at the administration saying, you got to get this guy some protection. This was true of Republicans, of Democrats, and it was true whether or not they actually had pull with the administration. You do what you can. When something really bad is about to happen, you do what you can, okay, whether you have pull or not.
Yeah, but as you said, whoever they happen to know in the administration, I mean, you wouldn't, if there was some big thing right now and a bunch of journalists felt the need to communicate with Biden, it's not like everyone at MSNBC would be texting Ron Klain. It just isn't that kind of relationship.
Oh, yes, they would. Of course they would.
No, they wouldn't. Ron Klain, you think Chris Hayes would would text Ron Klain?
Yes. Who do you think he's going to text?
You're assuming he would, A, you're assuming he would text somebody, and B, you're assuming that the symbiosis is so tight between MSNBC and Biden that they all have a texting relationship with Ron Klain. I just think that's wrong.
All it means is he has his phone number. Yes, I think he would be texting Ron Klain.
This was clearly,
you could ask him.
I could ask him.
But I think you text who you know, and I could text somebody. It wouldn't be returned, would have no effect. But
these guys, you can tell. I mean, they were in the habit. This was not the first text they sent to the guy. I mean, this is like an ongoing conversation.
No, that's true. And Laura especially has Hannity talks to Trump on the phone, and Laura has a track record of turning Trump around on key issues. She's usually right. So she was right about this one.
By the way, yeah.
No, go ahead.
It was going to be a slight change of subject. So go ahead.
I wasn't going to change the subject. I read Bart Gellman's incredibly long Atlantic article.
That's actually exactly what I was going to say, except that I didn't read it. I just heard him on a podcast.
Okay.
So go ahead.
Well, I read it. I have two. It's not as bad as I'd hoped. It's actually pretty good.
We should tell people he is alarmed that the Trump people are preparing to steal the next election, or they're
correct.
They're doing what they can to pave the way for influencing the count in key states in the next election and doing other things
in a way that switches the result. Yes.
Yeah.
So he thinks it's an anti-democratic coup. It's already started. They've already started planning. But it also has a retrospective on January 6th. And the problem with all these retrospectives on January 6th is they don't have the goods on Trump yet. Maybe when they get Steve Bannon's phone records, if they get him, there will be a call from Trump saying, keep the riot going, or something to that effect, effectively keep the riot going, which would be a smoking gun. All they have him now is negligence of letting the riot go, whether or not he had involved in planning it. And there's a big difference between those two. So they all sort of dance around the fact that they don't have this smoking gun. There's a hole in their evidence, and Gellman is no different. He dances around that. The second point.
He doesn't purport? Has he asserted that it is the case? And you're saying he's asserted
they all
it's the case, but
they all
evidence?
imply that this is what Trump wanted, and he engineered a coup, and et cetera, et cetera. And we don't know that he engineered a coup. We know that he set the groundwork that led to these people.
The argument I've seen is different. I've seen the argument that he was working hard to subvert the Constitution in the sense of getting Mike Pence to do something he doesn't have the constitutional authority to do. Not that he envisioned a riot and encouraged it. I haven't heard who is making that argument.
Well, a lot of people.
I mean, aside from various hacks, but I mean, who like in Bart
they all
Gellman's
imply
league
that they all imply that in part of this plan to influence Pence was staging what happened on January 6th, and we don't know that. We know that he wanted a big rally. We know that they wanted people to yell at Pence. We know that they wanted them to put a lot of pressure on Pence, but it's not unconstitutional to put pressure on Pence. We didn't know that he wanted them to invade the Capitol and threaten Pence's life.
So Bart Gellman doesn't say this, but you think
I don't know what exactly he says, but they never give up this implication that part of Trump's nefarious plot was the violence of January 6th.
I would be surprised if Bart is meaning to say that Trump envisioned the invasion of the Capitol building and that was part of the scheme all along. It's like
poetry. You take the connotations that are there. He certainly doesn't.
It's funny.
He certainly doesn't go out of his way to say, I'm not saying that Trump intended the violence.
If there's one thing Bart Gellman doesn't do, it's poetry. And I actually have a story about that that I'll save for the Parrot Room. But I should write it down. But he is the most straightforward, explicit, linear reporter and expositor. He's not in the habit of leaving things to the imagination.
Right. But nobody is making these key distinctions you're making. They think it diminishes the force of their argument if they say there is still no evidence that Trump intended the riot. He doesn't have that said in his piece, I guarantee you. The second point is, after this not unconvincing piece that Trump is planning these things in the state capitals, right. and he has no solution to it. His two solutions are pass these voting rights bills, which he himself admits will not solve the problem of states choosing alternate electors if the election barely goes for the Democrat. But
it's less likely to barely go for the Democrat if you pass that reform, right? That's his point. It's less likely to be a cliffhanger.
Yeah, I mean, but if the states can do whatever the hell they want, that's not
the closer
much
the
solace.
Election, the better for them. If they
not much solace. The way it's looking now, that's not going to be a relevant factor. And B, that they should somehow hold Trump accountable. Well, how are they going to do that? I mean, they're going to put him on criminal trial. That's going to take forever. It will probably only make him stronger if you hold the rioters accountable. And we don't know if they have anything to do with Trump. If they hold the rioters accountable, if they're really 30 million people who are ready to take up arms for Trump, holding 700 of them accountable is just going to piss off the other 29,900,900.
He may indeed have no good solutions, but I'd like to pause a little longer on that thing you passed over quickly when you said his not unconvincing argument that Trump is conspiring now to steal the next election. That is your view now, that there's real evidence?
Well, he's fighting the last war. He wants people in these offices that he couldn't convince to change electors.
Getting ready for the
it's a flaw in the Constitution. It's like Osama bin Laden discovered a flaw in our security. You could get on a plane and fly it into a building. There's a stupid provision in the Constitution that says states decide who the electors are, and that doesn't sit well with our current philosophy, which is it should be decided by a fair popular vote in every state, even if you accept the Electoral College. So how do you cabin, as the lawyers would put it, the discretion of these states to nominate whatever the hell electors they want? It's very hard to come up with something, but they better come up with it if they want to counter what Trump is trying to do, if they want to eliminate the threat. I don't think the threat's as big as they say, but the threat is there. And if it seems to be incumbent on a writer, if he says, we have this horrible problem bearing down on us, to come up with a solution. And especially if you say, here's what should be done, and it's inadequate, you should admit that it's inadequate.
First of all, I'm glad to hear you compare Trump to Osama bin Laden. I encourage you to do that as often as possible. Second, it's not incumbent. A writer is entitled to point to what they think is a grave problem, do the best they can with respect to solutions. And if you'd like them to add the sentence saying, I'm not sure these will work, fine. But this, it just seems to me where,
he did not add
this is not the fundamental indictment of the piece that.
No, but it's a pretty fundamental objection, which is he didn't add the sentence saying, none of these solutions that I've mobilized you for comes even close to solving the problem. I think you should be honest enough to admit that, yes. I think it's a failing in a piece if you don't admit that.
Oh, give me a break. I mean, here's the real story from what you're saying is like...
If I'd written a piece about welfare saying, here's a horrible welfare problem, and shit, I don't know, and do these three things, and they're not going to come close to the problem, and this is my solution, that would be a shitty piece.
No, it wouldn't, if they're the best solutions you can come up with. But anyway, the main thing is, so Bart Gellman writes this piece saying, listen, America, there is a grave danger that Donald Trump is going to steal the next election. And now what you, Mickey Kaus, are saying is actually the danger is even graver than Bart Gellman is saying. Great. If that's the takeaway here, he's understating the danger. Fine. I'm satisfied that that's not
I think he's overstating the danger, but I think the danger, there is a small percentage danger that is real and one should worry about. He convinced me of that. And I was sort of convinced before, but he has sort of, he marshals the evidence. He doesn't have a lot of new evidence, but he marshals the evidence that's out there. And, but he doesn't have a solution to that small percentage problem, which I think is smaller than he thinks, but it's real. He does not have the solution. And it's not that there isn't a solution. The solution, I think, is to somehow give good, well-meaning people on the courts, and I include Trump appointees to the Supreme Court in this, the tools they need to stop the states from doing this, and make sure those tools are there.
Like what?
I don't know. There's a.
You better have a solution.
You could say there's maybe there are arguments that you can draw on Baker versus Carr, that there's one man, one vote. And if you let the Republicans, overturn a majority vote in their states, that violates the Constitution. So the courts have the authority to supervise what the states do. I'm just made that up. But lawyers are good at making this stuff up. And it would be obviously made up. It would be a wink, wink, not super constitutional way of filling up this flaw in the Constitution of closing this Osama bin Laden-like loophole in the Constitution structure, which stupidly gives the right to the states.
So you're talking about the fact that
he quite honestly discusses a lot of these problems. He just doesn't have the solution.
So is the big focal point the fact that the Constitution says the state legislature shall determine the manner in which the electoral votes are chosen?
I I think it's it's a little worse than that. I think the state chooses the electors, not just the manner.
Well, no, what the Constitution says is the manner, and then the question is, and I think the good news is the consensus among legal scholars is the legislature has to do that before the election. And what they have all done is say that's going to be determined by popular vote. That's the current system. But the point is, the Constitution does allow the state legislature to say the state legislature chooses the electors. That would be constitutional. But I think, A, the consensus is they would have to do it before the election. They can't change the rules after they've let the people vote. And B, it would be pretty hard to pull off. If a state legislature announced that they are taking the choice away from the people, that would presumably be a political
I don't think
problem.
that's how it would happen. It would happen the way it happened in Florida. There's a very close election. Democrats say they won the election. Republicans say, no, you're counting votes that shouldn't be counted. So we're setting this alternate state of electors because we think the voters have the right to decide, but we think the voters voted Republican.
Okay, that's a little, I think that would be a little different. It is problematic. I mean, they'd be sending an alternate slate or something. And the trouble there is that when there are two slates sent by a given state, Congress decides, and if that's in Republican hands, game over. But I think that's a little different from, I don't know if in that case the state legislature
I'm not
would
sure
be saying,
two slates go. It may be that only the official legislatively chosen slate goes.
Well, okay, but there is, the most recent, that ambiguous law that unfortunately governs elections because it's the most recent congressional law. It's like 100 years old or something. You know the one I mean, the Electoral Reform Act?
The Electoral Count Act. But I don't even think changing that solves the problem.
It clearly anticipates two slates coming from one state.
Which
I think it explicitly says Congress will decide in that event.
Which happened, but so eliminating that doesn't solve the problem. Somebody has to decide. And unless it's the courts, we're not going to think it's fair, and it will be subject to political manipulation. If you assume that Trump has, total 100% totalitarian control over every Republican elected official.
So you're imagining that it's a close election, and the state legislature says, wait a second, it's unclear whether really these ballot boxes were authorized legitimately. It just says something. And then you're imagining it canceling the officially counted popular vote and just sending alternates.
Well, that's what they threatened to do in Florida.
And that's something.
2000.
If they're going to try that, they could try it. They could have tried it last time. I think the danger is
the Republican officials balked last time. That's his whole point, Gellman's whole point.
Well, that's the other thing. So state legislatures are doing other things, such as apparently in Georgia, I think it's the legislature that has, in a sense, what would the term be? Well, it means taking the power away from the Secretary of State. You know, that guy who was the stand-up guy in Georgia?
Yes.
Yeah. So he's going to have less authority next time around because I think the legislature's already changed the rules. I think Bart is pointing to a number of things like that that are going on at the state level. That's a little different from just saying the state legislature will suddenly assert itself. The rules are being changed that facilitate that. Right?
Right. Well, you could say that but I think if the state legislature decides the election in like a completely, maybe I'm wrong, in a completely obviously biased pro-Republican or pro-Democratic way, courts can step in. I think the part that would be that's dangerously immune to judicial review is the choice of which electors to send. So it's getting rid of Raffensperger. I don't think gets rid of judicial review of whatever the Secretary of State does. They have to do something more. They have to ignore whatever the Secretary of State does. The state legislature has to say, "You're wrong, Secretary of State. We're going to send these other electors."
And that's what the problem. What they're doing in Raffensperger is hamstringing his office, not getting rid of him.
Right, but I think if they use that to, promote some sort of obvious steal, I think they can be stopped. Maybe I'm wrong. It's it's one of those things. It's hard to figure. There's no foolproof system, but a system that winds up with the I'm arguing against experience. A system that winds up with the Supreme Court making the final decision is the best we're going to do, even though they made the wrong decision last time.
Here's a paragraph from a New York Times piece. And legislation that state lawmakers have passed or tried to pass this year in a number of states would assert more control over election systems and results by partisan offices that Republicans already decisively control. I think that generically is the kind of thing that's going on in states. And I guess it's worrisome. I didn't, like I said, I didn't read his piece. It's just that he's a pretty serious person and very smart. And so when I heard him on the podcast, he made me think this is serious.
Yeah. None of it.
Yeah.
I don't think any of his solutions actually stop, the Georgia state legislature from fucking around with the election results without appointing another slate of electors. So I don't think he solved that one either. But
could be.
So I blame the editors of The Atlantic. I have no faith in the editors of The Atlantic. If he'd written that piece of the New Republic, they would have made him come up with a solution or say he didn't have a solution. Standards have declined. It's so sad.
One sentence that says, here's the best I can do is all you're asking for. The more important question about his piece is it successfully alarming? And you're conceding that it is.
Yeah, I think it is successfully alarming.
So we've been doing this an hour, and we haven't come up with a lot of things. Oh, you know what we should say? We didn't discuss this right beforehand, but I think we have agreed, right? The next 2 Fridays are respectively Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve. I ain't working, but, and it's holiday time. So we're going to do a show in between, right? Like in between our big year end.
That's fine with me. I don't think we can't take 2 weeks straight off, so we have to do.
No, we're splitting the difference with one gala show.
Okay, we'll work it out
in the middle. It's a gala.
It'll be very glamorous.
It'll be in between Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve. There won't be a show on those 2 nights.
Right. And maybe So I thought this shirt thing was like Brad Pitt changing the antenna in that Tarantino movie.
Brad Pitt was one of several actors that came to mind when you do it.
There's one I wanted to try to come up with a word for a new concept because there are all these formerly woke politicians who are now that the crime wave has, they've seen the polls on crime changing voters' minds against the Democrats, like Mayor London Breed of San Francisco, were saying, wait, this crime problem is horrible. We have to stop whatever madness led to this crime wave. And Pelosi has sort of gone halfway to that, said, I don't know what's causing the crime wave, but she's admitted there's a crime wave. So what's the word for when woke people wake up to the dangers of wokeness? I wanted to call it woke. They're woke to wokeness. Woke squared.
That would work. I don't know. Meta-woke, meta-woke. I like meta-woke.
Meta-woke, I'll go for, but it lacks the absurdity of woke.
But how many people really fit this description? Oh, that reminds me. We can talk about this in the Parrot Room. We've gone over an hour, but we should talk about that Ron Brownstein piece I sent to you about the liberals who are concerned about excessive wokeness.
Well, then I'll have to read it. I'll read it by the Parrot Room.
I was sorry to see. What?
I'll read it before the Parrot Room. I did not have time to read it.
Oh, okay.
Today.
Yeah. What else for Parrot Room?
There's let's see. There's Trump's comment about Jews.
I missed it.
Very controversial. Boris
Why don't you
Johnson.
tell me what he said, and I'll be thinking about it.
Well, you can look up what he said. If I tell you what it said, then I'll tell you what I think of it, and then it will already have been discussed.
Okay.
Trump. There's the Gillen trial. There is possible extensions of wokeness that we can talk about. There's a whole bunch of things. Harvard abandoning the SATs.
Oh, yeah.
China embracing being sanctioned by our Commerce Department for brain control technologies. You can imagine what that is. I think there's going to be a move for an immigration moratorium. There's whatever the Supreme Court did with abortion, which I think is very wily of them.
Well, meanwhile, the FDA did some counter programming there, right?
Yes, but the big I'm focusing on the election effect, like a hack political reporter.
So I'm gonna.
There's my friend Richard Rushfield's blockbuster announcement about what's happening with his newsletter. Which
do you have a T-shirt for that?
Not yet.
Okay.
I will try to get one.
Okay.
His site is called The Ankler, but it's about the entertainment industry, Bob. So it's not in our wheelhouse.
Okay.
Or
so anything else?
No, it's a shockingly. I mean, I'm sure I'll come up with something else, but
well, I thought of I discovered. I came across another unflattering thing I could say about Sam Harris that kind of applies to Brett and Eric Weinstein. So God knows I'll do that. I bought a car, Mickey. At least I put down a deposit. The car is coming. So that's big news, and everyone will want to hear about that.
I certainly want
to announce NPR.
And there's a riveting tailgate question.
That's going to keep them.
Yeah.
Keep them. Yeah.
Even if they know the result, they'll want to know what about the tailgate.
Totally.
Yeah. Okay.
That's what they're waiting to hear. The let's see. We will reply to a Parrot Room commenters complaining about that we did not use appropriate language in discussing a trans swimmer. I think she's got us dead to rights. We did not, and I think the question is, in what sense are we culpable, and was there malice aforethought or whatever? And then Buddhism. There's a Buddhism question from a commenter.
I have a slight follow-up to my Beatles apostasy.
Good. We need
an area where I think the readers were right and I was wrong. So there.
The Parrot Room commenters. They are always right.
No, they're not. Have I discussed the importance of the culture of dependence in my arguments on
not more than a billion times over the last several decades? Why do you ask?
Okay. Well, anyway.
Well, wait. I missed the last part. What was the last part?
In the debate over the child tax credit, there's the debate is focusing on whether this will discourage people from going to work. And I guess I think that's not the right debate to have. The debate is whether over the long term it creates a culture of dependence, even if it temporarily causes some people not to work. Who cares if you know they still are in the culture of work generally, and they're just taking a couple years off. The argument against it is not that; it's that in the long term they will be mired in a culture where their kids grow up not knowing work, working less, more addicted to meth, fewer marriages, et cetera, et cetera. The whole culture of dependence
I'm happy to say I'm happy to say that was such a comprehensive treatment of it that I don't think we need to discuss it in the Parrot Room. Thank you for that concise and persuasive.
But I think there's a Rosetta Stone one can look at to see if this culture of dependence is happening, which I will reveal in the Parrot Room.
That's what lies beyond the paywall is the Rosetta Stone.
Exactly.
God, there must be more pop culture stuff. But I haven't had much. Oh, I got a Daryl Beatty tweet. I want to see a Darren Beatty tweet. I'm going to see if you're going to defend.
Okay.
Seemed a little borderline to me. He's a Trump guy.
It seems to me that the bigger picture is both parties are realizing sort of what the hell are they for? I mean, the Republicans have this problem more than the Democrats. The Democrats are saying we want this Build Back Better bill. It'll be transformational. I don't quite believe it, but they've laid their cards on the table. The Republicans are being defensive, but once they stop being, they're defending against greater immigration. They're defending against tax increases. They're defending against these government programs that are in the Build Back Better bill. But what do they actually want to do? What's their affirmative long-term goal?
I'm with you.
Anyway, okay. And that's a sort of airy-fairy discussion that's best held in the Parrot Room.
So all this and more lies at patreon.com/Parrot Room. And there we go immediately. And then we next see people both here and in the Parrot Room in about in about 10 or 11 days, basically. Correct. After today, I mean.
Yeah. Well, will they get a notice? No, they won't get a notice. We'll just
No, that's why we're telling them now.
Watch our Twitter feeds.
Yeah. We will reinforce the point in the Parrot Room.
Yeah. Okay.
But yes. All right. See you there.
See ya.